All right, guys, what is going on? Welcome to the Gridiron Expert. I saw we had a couple guys on there already. They were waiting in the lobby at least. Maybe they're not here yet. But we got Cyclone Mitch on the line. Good to see you, man. Comic Dude 45. Always good to have you. Both of you guys. I mean, I'm not even surprised to see you guys. The first two people that commented on the live stream. So good to have you guys here. MCD Sports 4, Eli Arbezo. Good to have you guys too. Ryan Mell. I think I just talked to you on Twitter a few seconds ago. So good to have you on the live stream, man. I appreciate y'all stopping by on this Friday night. You know, you guys could be out there. You could be partying, could be hitting it hard, having a blast on Friday night, but you're here with us talking college football, and we appreciate that more than you guys know, and that's personally what we would rather be doing more than anything else, sitting here with you guys having some college football discussion. So good to have you guys. Emperor of Rome, John Hopkins, George Stice, good to have you guys. Thank you guys for all stopping by. Good to have you guys. We got all of my moderators here, I think. So that's what I'm talking about. Hopefully we won't have any screw-ups like we did a couple weeks ago. And I know it's been a few weeks since we had a live stream. We'll jump into that here in a second and what to expect over the next couple of weeks because we got some big stuff that we got to announce there. Comic Dude 45 got your first rehearsal tomorrow. Already for prepping for band already, which I guess starting June. You're going to have to start getting ready. June starts August 31st for Rutgers, so yeah, that's a big stuff. Emperor, this is a party, absolutely. We got some good guys on here that know what they're talking about, some solid insight. This is what I'm talking about. And of course, it wouldn't be a party right now without the notorious Nona Bees. So good to have you, Nona. Always glad to have you here. So let's start getting some discussion going. As people keep coming in, we'll keep shouting y'all out. And thank you once again. Thank you guys for having us, or thank you guys for coming here tonight. Hot take: Rutgers will make a bowl game from Cyclone Mitch. That's really bold. You know, I'll tell you a funny story about that, Mitch. The production that I run up at Arkansas State. And Eli, I saw your question about ASU. We'll touch on that here in a second. But the production that I run up at ASU. We do segments on there where it's hot takes. We at the end of the show we kind of give like a bold prediction. Maybe it could be something like Rutgers will make a bowl game or something like that. Now the problem is when we're done with that, kind of within ourselves, if our hot take, as we call them, does not pan out. If I predicted Rutgers to make a bowl game and they fell short, there'd be some sort of punishment involved, and it involves doing something that would. Maybe be eating a pepper or just drinking a thing of hot sauce or something like that. Obviously something involving something hot, and that's what we do there. So you have to be really careful, and we're going to even up the ante a little bit when I take over next year. We're going to really hit it hard, make the punishments a little greater, and probably put those on air too. So got to be careful with those bold takes, got to be careful with those hot takes, because you never know if they're going to come back to bite you, or maybe they pan out and you look like a genius. Comic Dude, sounds like you had a good night. Where was that? Had good pizza with your pops? Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. And then rehearsal tomorrow, which I know you are probably getting excited about. So, hey, that sounds like fun to me. Eli, you said thoughts on the Arkansas State outlook, and we'll get to that here in a second. Or I'll touch on that briefly before we hit everything else. But ASU, as you guys know, where I go to school, it's going to be an up and down season, I think. You know, we just got a major transfer, and as I mentioned, that's not my team. That's not my favorite team, even though it's where I go to school. But we just got a big-time transfer in Lane Hatcher. Maybe you guys have heard of him. He was a star quarterback here in Little Rock, Pulaski Academy, which is a couple of years ago was one of the better high schools in the nation. We're playing teams out in California and Louisiana, some of the big dogs. I think they were somewhat nationally ranked in the nation when it came to high school football. He goes from there and went to Alabama. Now, I'll tell you one thing. Lane Hatcher was not good enough to go play quarterback at Alabama. He would have never seen the field with the Crimson Tide. But the reason he went there was because he wanted to say that he won a national championship. Well, that didn't happen last year. So he transferred from Alabama to Arkansas State, and there's a very good chance that he could be quarterback in 2019, replacing Justice Hansen, who did so well for the Red Wolves over the past couple of years. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as they're entering this season. The defense under Blake Anderson is usually fairly decent, but this does not feel like a championship caliber year. This does not feel like a year that Arkansas State is going to win the Sun Belt or maybe even make the Sun Belt championship game. They didn't make it last year, and they should have. with the amount of talent they had last year, and then they lose a lot of that talent, I don't think they're going to be able to get there in 2019. I think they're still a bowl team, 7 wins, 8 wins. A-State's been doing that for 6 or 7 years now, but I don't think this is one of those championship years for them. And that's disappointing for a team that had kind of solidified themselves as one of the best in the Sun Belt. But you got teams like Georgia Southern and Appalachian State and Troy and guys like that are kind of rising up and starting to threaten them. And for a while, that wasn't the case. So I hope they do well. I really do. They got a date against SMU and Shane Buechele in week 1. That actually coming to Jonesboro, coming to Arkansas State. And then they have a date against Georgia, I think in week 2 or week 3. And so we all know how that one's going to turn out. But it's going to be interesting. So let's see who else we got here. Southside Mike, what's going on, man? Glad to have you. MCD Sports 4. I saw your thing up there. I don't know what you meant by that, but you were like, I can't wait till tomorrow. That's when I'm going to start holding everybody their predictions. So maybe there's some other predictions coming out. If you guys know, we will be having our predictions starting on June 27th. If you have not seen our little hype video that we put out, you might want to go check that out. But June 27th, so less than a month away, we will be starting predictions. And as you know how that goes, it's going to be an exciting time. Non-stop content, every single Power 5 team, conference recaps. We're going to do group of 5 conference recaps. We're going to still throw some live streams in there, so you're not going to want to miss any of those. But June 27th is when our predictions start. And, of course, we have a lot of filler content to get us all the way to that point. So, MCD, you're saying Rutgers could be 4-8 at best. Liberty has a 25% chance to beat Syracuse, and we've talked about that on previous live streams. You know, Liberty with Hugh Freeze maybe giving Syracuse a run for their money in week 1, but Tommy DeVito, Dino Babers should be prepped enough to take care of Liberty. Even though 2 years ago they stunned Baylor, so it's not out of the question, but I'm not really buying that yet. 25% though is higher than I would have given them. Well, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate Gridiron Expert is a tier 1 college football YouTube channel. You know, when this live stream's over, Nona, I'm gonna go and I'm probably gonna take a picture of that comment just so I can use that to my advantage later on. So no, but I really do appreciate that. We like to consider ourselves that, but it doesn't mean anything in my opinion. It matters what y'all's opinion is, and if y'all's opinion is that means the world to me, and obviously means we're doing something right. So thank you so much, Nona, for that. Couple hot takes here. Comic Dude, you hate noon games. I hate noon games if it's my team. I don't have an issue with that if it's not my team playing in it. You know, if it's an 11 o'clock game or a 12 o'clock game, that's football all day, guys. You know, you wake up at maybe 8 o'clock for game day, maybe 9:30, depending on what time you wake up. Football starts at 11 o'clock. I'm Central Time. Some of you guys starts at noon. If you're on the East Coast, maybe earlier if you're on the West. But, you know, that's all day from 11 o'clock for me till about midnight. You know, you have those Pac-12 after dark games, some of those Mountain West games that are going so long. But if it's my team that's playing, I hate that it's an 11 o'clock game because they're done by 2 o'clock. And if they lose, it makes the rest of the day a whole lot worse. So that is something to kind of keep in mind, unfortunately, for those early games. I prefer the 2:30 games, and I really love night games. And Nona, you mentioned that you're a bigger fan of night games, and so am I. Regardless of who's in it, even if it's not my team, night games to me are just so much better. I'm even a stickler, man. When I'm playing the NCAA video game, or if I'm playing Madden or something like that, I want it to be night. I just prefer night games above anything else. I think the atmosphere is different. You've got all day. If you're going to the game, you've got all day to tailgate. Even if you're not, you've got all day to anticipate. And as I used to tell people, if your team loses a night game, you can just go right to bed and try to forget about it. So there's so many more advantages to night games, I think, than those early morning, 11 o'clock, 10 a.m., whatever time those games are. And Emperor of Rome, you say your hot takes that you love rainy games, which are fun to watch. Maybe a couple of years ago, maybe you guys saw it, the Notre Dame, North Carolina State game. That game was like a flood, man. I mean, you can't cancel it. I mean, if it wasn't thunder and lightning, it wasn't a hazard and a danger to the coaches and the players, you got to keep playing. But that game, I think it ended up being like 10-3. It was unbelievable. I mean, people couldn't hold on to the snaps. They couldn't throw. They were fumbling the ball left and right. But for us, the viewers, it was fun to watch. For the fans and the players, maybe not so much. But rainy games are fun. I prefer snow games even more. Games that are like blizzards, those are a blast to watch as well. Any kind of major weather games are really enjoyable, I think. Cyclone Mitch, you're talking about Brew McCoy. I want to get to that here in 1 second. But I saw you guys were talking about George. You said your friend is going to Iowa State next year. Are they going to be good? And if anybody wants to talk about that and wants to answer that question, Cyclone Mitch is your man. Big time. I mean, it's in the name, Cyclone Mitch. He's a big time Iowa State fan and knows his stuff for that matter. But he has Iowa State going 8-4, and I think that's a very solid prediction. Iowa State, I've said over and over, I think is the third best team in the Big 12 right now, behind Oklahoma and Texas. But I think Iowa State gets to host Texas this year, so there's a chance maybe they can pull off an upset against the Longhorns. They have to go back to Oklahoma, but they're not afraid of that. They beat the Sooners in Lincoln or in Norman 2 years ago, so it's not out of the question. Iowa State's a very solid team. 8-4, very solid prediction, Mitch. I don't know what I had them at off the top of my head right now, but yeah. So George, your friend's in good shape. If your friend's looking for a solid team to root for next year, he's good to go. Whew, man, I tell you what, Comic Dude, try waking up at 4:30 in the morning for those 11 o'clock games, the absolute worst. And I bet, man, for you guys, man, that's tough. That is tough. I tell you what. For the marching band guys, I get that. You got to get there, got to get dressed, you got to get there. You rehearse a little bit, I'm sure, beforehand, and you're marching, getting everything lugged over their equipment. I mean, you've seen those big band buses. I mean, I give you guys credit. No, the marching band. A lot of people, that's just your halftime filler entertainment. But there's a lot more that goes into that. So I give you some credit, man. I really do. I think I'm impressed. I really am. So kudos to you guys, and kudos to y'all bringing us some good, solid entertainment during the break, and also just keeping it lively, keeping it energized in the stands. So Cyclone Mitch, what was one of the things on my list? I'm seeing all these comments here, and I definitely will get to them. But you mentioned that Bru McCoy should make up his mind, and I tell you what, that was like the number one thing on my list right now to talk about was Bru McCoy. It's unbelievable the lack of loyalty that we are seeing now from college football players. The guy commits to USC, then he decommits and decides to transfer to Texas. And then he goes from Texas back to USC, so much so that Tom Herman and some of the top Texas players flew out to California to try to bring him back to Austin. I get he's a highly talented recruit, but first off, before we even get on to Bru McCoy, you've got to have a little more dignity than that for Tom Herman and Texas. Because look, I think it's great. If I was him, I would be all for him coming to play for us. I really would. But at the end of the day, if he decides to leave and doesn't want to stick with this Austin program, this Texas program, then that's his loss. You recruit a guy hard, but if he's going to diss you like that, just immediately leave after only sticking around for a few months, after going back to the original school that he committed to, that's 3 times he's moved, in a span of less than a year, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So yes, he does need to make up his mind. I think he finally has. I think he's going to stick at USC. I would just like to know kind of his thought process, because when you leave USC to go to Texas, there's obviously a reason. Maybe he doesn't like the situation in Southern California. Maybe he thinks he's going to have a better opportunity, better success in Austin. So what made him want to go back to USC? Because he left for a reason in the first place. It just doesn't make any sense. But players don't have any loyalty. And I was talking to an old friend of mine, and he made a good point, saying that coaches don't have any loyalty either. And I think there's a definite line to be drawn there. I think it's a different relationship. It's a different path for players and coaches. But players, more than anything, when you're committing to a school, you need to stick with that school. It's something that I've been raised on. When you commit to something, you stick with it. If you're going to be committed, you will stick with that thing. Comic Dude, if you're committed to band, you'll stick with band. If you're committed to playing a sport, you'll stay with that sport. Or if you make a commitment, if you tell someone you're going to be somewhere or you're going to do something, you do it. I get sometimes there are scenarios where you can't. We talked about some of the transfers of guys leaving to go, for family members, get close to family. Maybe they lose the starting job or something, and they have to leave for that. But I think there are certain instances that make it okay to leave a school, decommit, transfer, whatever, but I think loyalty is the biggest thing, and that's unfortunately not being taught much anymore. So you're right, Bru McCoy needs to make up his mind. I think he finally has. I think he will stay at USC, maybe not for the whole 4 years or 2 years, however long he chooses to play college football, but I don't think he will be moving anymore. But it's absolutely ridiculous and frustrating across the board. John Hopkins, another bold prediction here. I'm loving these. Kentucky is beating Florida 2 years in a row. Well, they get to host Florida in Lexington this year. That's the one advantage that they do have. the downside to Kentucky this year is that they lose Benny Snell, who was their workhorse last year. They lose Josh Allen, who was just a dominant force defensively last year. And Florida is going to be, I think, even better than they were last year. And they have revenge on their mind after losing their streak over Kentucky first off, and then also losing that streak in the Swamp. So it's a bold prediction. It's not out of the question because Kentucky's not going to go from a 10-win team to a 5-win team or a 4-win team. They're going to be bowl eligible again and still remain a threat in the SEC East. But enough to beat Florida, that remains to be seen. Let's check out our predictions later on. I'll let you know what I think about that. MCD, have I gotten a chance to look at the game times for the first week that came out? I did. I've been looking at those for a while. Some solid games, not many major surprises. The big time games in week 1, we kind of knew the times of those already. Auburn and Oregon going to be your primetime ABC game. You have Duke and Alabama. That's going to be your 2:30, I think, ABC game. There were a couple 11 o'clock games that did surprise me a little bit, but we know Sunday, I think, is Oklahoma and Houston. The lone game on that Sunday, so we know that's going to be a primetime game. The day after, Labor Day, Notre Dame and Louisville. So we knew some of the bigger games of week 1. We kind of knew those times already, or you kind of predicted those times already. But they've released, for most teams, the first 3 weeks of the season, they've released the times for. I know if you're an SEC guy, the first SEC on CBS game will be South Carolina and Alabama. I think that's coming in week 3 or week 4. And then the week after that, they have a doubleheader. A major storyline is the fact that LSU and Alabama will more than likely not be at night this year. For the past 6 or 7 years, that game, which many consider to be the determining factor of who wins the SEC West, even though LSU hasn't won since, I think, 2011, has always been at night. This time, it looks like Georgia and Notre Dame will probably take a night game earlier on in the season, in week 4, I believe, taking the SEC on CBS night slot, which means Alabama and LSU, assuming they get the 2:30, which you can almost guarantee they will be a 2:30 game instead of a night game. So that's something that I thought was kind of interesting, an interesting change by CBS and the TV crews. But look, for those games, if it's a big game, as long as it's not an 11 o'clock game, I'm fine. And none of those teams are my team, so I'm good with that too. So Eli, yeah, I'm not a morning person either. I feel that. Jesse Boyd, Syracuse might beat Clemson. No joke. Last time they did win in Syracuse. You're right, they did win in Syracuse. They were not as good as they were last year or as they will be this year. Although, if I'm not mistaken, Clemson lost their quarterback in that game. Am I right? Didn't they? Yeah. Kelly Bryant got hurt that game. That was the year they went to the Sugar Bowl, I think, and lost to Alabama. And that's no excuse. Look, if you're that good, you can find ways to win. Good teams find ways to win games. And Syracuse did beat them in the Dome. This year it's going to be close. I really do believe that. People are writing off Syracuse, man, saying that they're going to take a major step back. They won 10 games last year, and that included a bowl win. I'm not saying they're going to win 10 games again. But I'm not saying that they're going to drop from 10 to 6 wins or 10 to 5 wins. They are going to still be a threat in the ACC. Tommy DeVito's the real deal, guys. Everybody flips out when a team loses their star quarterback. And that's what just happened this year. Eric Dungey's gone as quarterback for the Orange, but Tommy DeVito's the real deal. He's still got talent around him. I'm not saying Syracuse is going to beat Clemson yet. Wait for our predictions, but I'm saying they're going to compete with them, and they're going to compete in the ACC. They're not going to have a major drop-off like some people think they will. MCD, you're more dedicated than me. You get up at 8:30 every Saturday for game day. I do get up for game day most times, depending on what I've done, how late I stayed up Friday night. But that's dedication, man. And I do enjoy watching it. There are sometimes on game day, guys, there are some things I definitely disagree with. Some of the things they do, some of the things they say. The analysis sometimes isn't the best, but it is extremely entertaining. I never miss a Corso headgear pick. That's usually the highlight of my morning before I dive into watching all the games for the rest of the day. It's always a blast. And it's unfortunate, guys. He's near the end of his career. I was talking to some people about that the other day. Corso was nearing the end of his career, and what a run it's been. We don't know how much time he's got left on the show, but it's going to be a dark day when he stops doing headgear picks. Whatever happens, it's going to be a dark day, and you just can't replace that. I'm sure they'll try. They might try to bring someone in, maybe not doing headgear picks, but someone to bring in that enthusiasm and that that fun that Corso brings to the set, but it's just not going to match what Corso's done for the past 20 years or so. It really has been a blast. No, I just saw your comment. You think this could be his last year? Very well could be. He's getting on up there in age. There's going to come a time where he's got to stop, and I hope this isn't his last year, but you just never know. There are a lot of teams that have not been able to experience their team. First off, there are a lot of teams that haven't even experienced game day period, having game day come to their city. But I also haven't experienced, of course, of picking up their team's head and putting that on. It's a pretty awesome feeling, an awesome moment for those fans, and for all of college football, really. Ryan Mel, I have like a holy trinity of college football channels, and that's the Gridiron Expert, Mark Rogers TV, and SG1 Sports. Well, I'm just honored to have made the holy trinity. I am really, Brian, I appreciate that, man. If I could, I don't think there's a way to do that. If I could like comments, or I can do that on normal videos, can't do it on here, but I'll tell you that I love that comment more than anything. And Mark and SG1 Sports do produce some very good content. They really do. More closer friends to Mark than I am with SG1 Sports, but like I said, all of our college football channels, it's like an inner circle. We all talk, we all collaborate, we all discuss. So, but I appreciate it, man. That's probably one of the better comments I've ever gotten myself. So, I'm honored to make your holy trinity, and we appreciate you coming on. Eli, which of these former great programs that struggled last year will bounce back this year? Nebraska, USC, Florida State, or Tennessee? And everybody, Nona and Comic Dude and MCD Sports 4 all saying Nebraska. And I would also agree with Nebraska. I think Tennessee can make a bowl game. I think Florida State could maybe also make a bowl game. Although if you look at their schedule, guys, and I might get hate for this, but their schedule is brutal. Before we get to George, hey, all good, man. All good. I appreciate you stopping by, George. Go catch some frogs. Let me know how that goes next live stream. But thank you for stopping by. Have a good rest of your night, man. I wish I was going out and doing that. But Florida State, man, their schedule is absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. And so whether or not the Seminoles under Willie Taggart can get back to a bowl game, that remains to be seen. If they don't, he's out. I'll just put it easy for you, straight and easy. He's done if he fails to get to a bowl game. And I think they can do that. James Blackman or Alex Hornibrook at quarterback should be enough to get them to a bowl game, but I think Nebraska's the man. Scott Frost is building something. There's a lot of hype. You saw the drastic change in play over the last half of the season. Adrian Martinez, some are considering a Heisman candidate. I'm not going that far yet, and I'm not even going as far as to say that I'm buying all this Nebraska hype. But out of those teams you mentioned, Eli, Nebraska is the team that I think will have the best year out of those four, better than USC, Florida State, and Tennessee. I'm not buying all the hype that they might beat Ohio State, that they might win the Big Ten, or anything like that. But I do think they'll show major signs of improvement in year 2 under Scott Frost, maybe even better in year 3, because they'll still have Martinez in year 3. And that could be the year they really, really break through and do some big things. Get back to that Nebraska dominance that we were used to years and years ago, and that they really haven't found over the past 10 years, which has kind of been unfortunate. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, Comic Dude, you're right. Texas and USC are kind of like rivals. MCD, they met in the 2006 championship, one of the best football games of all time. That Rose Bowl between Vince Young at Texas and Pete Carroll and Reggie Bush at USC. They're not like hardcore rivals like Texas and Texas A&M were, or Texas and Oklahoma were, but I think there is a bit of a rivalry there. I think that game, because of how good it was and how many times you see it on replay and how many times people reference that moment, kind of sparked a rivalry in and of itself. They met each other last year, met each other 2 years ago, and 2 years ago was an absolute classic at the Coliseum as well. USC sneaking away with an overtime win over Texas in that one. So I do think there's a bit of a rivalry there, which is why it is kind of ridiculous. It doesn't matter who the teams are, but it is kind of ridiculous that McCoy is going back and forth between the two. But it would be worse if McCoy was going back and forth between like an Oklahoma and Texas, something like that. A much bigger rivalry than USC and Texas. Mark TR, you are here. Where is that? To rep Manny Diaz and the turnover chain. Is that what I read? Did I read that right? Here to rep Cuban Gangsta, Manny Diaz, and the turnover chain. All right. Hey, well, we're good to have you. We're happy to have you. Rep the turnover chain. Rep the U. Miami hopefully going to take some major turns in the right direction after a bad year last year. Maybe Manny Diaz can right the ship and bring the U back to some actual dominance. That's what I want to see. I want to see Miami relevant again. Ziggy Thief, good to have you, man. When do I think Michigan will beat Ohio State? Well, I can tell you this. If Michigan wants to beat Ohio State, and when they beat Ohio State, they want it to count towards something, it's got to be this year. And I think they could do it this year. I really, really do. You know, Ohio State, bringing in Justin Fields, a guy that I'm not super high on right now. I think he's a good quarterback. I do. I think he's a fine quarterback. Was not impressed with the spring game, and that's not, a bad spring game performance does not mean that he's going to have a bad regular season. There's still plenty of time to perfect some things. But they do have a new coach, and this is a Michigan team that I think could be one of their best that they've had under Jim Harbaugh. I know for some people that's hard to believe considering the amount of talent that they've lost last year and the year before that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But they finally have themselves a capable quarterback, Shea Patterson, Donovan Peoples-Jones at wide receiver. And the pressure is there more than anything. The pressure is there for Jim Harbaugh and this Wolverines team. Everybody thinks this could be the year that Michigan slips into the playoff, and the schedule isn't bad up until that Ohio State point. I know they have Notre Dame, but last year they played at Notre Dame, if I'm not mistaken. So they get to host the Fighting Irish this year, which is huge for them. And then if they can take care of Ohio State, a one-loss Michigan team that wins the Big Ten over a team maybe like, let's just say, maybe they beat Wisconsin, maybe they beat Nebraska, maybe they beat Northwestern, whoever it is, Michigan's better, I think, than any of those teams that take care of business there, and they advance to the college football playoff, assuming they're undefeated or a one-loss team. But it all remains to be seen. I really do think, though, Ziggy, that it could happen this year. I really do think it could. No, you're right. Talking about Brew McCoy, still loyalty not even a real thing anymore, and that is very sad. Loyalty across the board doesn't always just come to football. It comes to friendships and relationships and everything else. Loyalty across the board for everybody is just not really a thing. I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying nobody's loyal. Plenty of loyal people out there, but it's something that's not taught very well anymore, and something that it's something that people are losing. And that is very unfortunate. Emperor of Rome, man, you're like my little encyclopedia, man. You're like my Wikipedia, my go-to facts guy. You're like the ESPN stats and information guy, and I absolutely love it. We were talking about weather games. Emperor of Rome, spitting out the facts like he always does. Coldest football game ever was the 1981 AFC Championship game between the Bengals and the Chargers. At one point, the wind chill, negative 38 degrees. And it's kind of interesting. People will always associate maybe the coldest game in history with the Ice Bowl. I think that was between the Packers and the Cowboys a long, long time ago, early 60s or 70s. But incorrect, apparently. 1981 AFC Championship game, Bengals and Chargers. At one point, negative 38 degrees. I can't imagine being a player and getting hit and being tackled to the ground, let alone being a fan who's not even moving, just standing there. It'd be unbelievable. Comic Dude, another bold prediction here. Syracuse will lose at Maryland, get caught looking ahead to Clemson. As possible. We've talked about that, guys. We've talked about the scheduling and the impact of that, how some teams can get caught looking ahead to a big rivalry game, to a big game that they really are looking to pull off a major upset, and they get caught and they lose to a team that they should beat. And everybody knows they are more than capable of beating, but their focus is not in the right place. And that all comes down to coaching. That's not players. Because more than anything, I think, for any team, coaches and players alike are all looking forward to that big rivalry game or a revenge game or something like that. The players, though, they've got that game circle on their calendars. The coaches have to be the ones to keep them in line, to keep them in check, to say, hey, even if we're playing, some crappy FCS team, we have to keep our head in the right place mentally, take care of business this week, and then move on, take care of the next team. A lot of coaches are adapting that 1 week at a time, that 1-0 mentality, and that's what people need more than anything now. So it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal. But you're right, that's pretty bold. And Maryland under Mike Locksley and now adding Josh Jackson at quarterback is more than capable of pulling off a handful of upsets this year and potentially getting to the postseason in his first year as head coach. And as I see, MCD Sports 4, of course, loves that comment and loves that bold prediction. And before we get going, guys, before we continue through this, and I'm of course going to hit the rest of this, we have about 8 people on. I should have said this earlier when we had more. Hopefully the news will spread or something like that. This will be the last live stream for a couple weeks now. I'm actually going out of town. I'm going to be out of state. We will be in New York, and if DM was here from New York State, he would probably be happy about that. Happy to know that I'm going to be in town. Comic Dude, I'll be in your neck of the woods, but I'll be in New York for a couple days. I'll actually be at ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut next Thursday, so about 6 days. We're going to be meeting with some people there, trying to see what kind of deals we can strike up and stuff like that. So we'll be in New York for a few days, be in Bristol, and then we're going to make our way up to Canada, actually. So I'm going to be gone for about 2 weeks. Now, that does not mean that content will stop. I've got a bunch of videos that we have already filmed or are in the process of filming that I'm hoping to get released over the course of my stay there in New York and in Bristol. But it will be the last live stream for the while, and you'll have to forgive me if we're unable to get those contents out super regularly. But as soon as we get back, we're going to be about 2 weeks away. About 2 weeks away from prediction season, and I think we can all wait for that. Content will pick up as soon as we get back. 2 weeks, predictions, carries us all the way to the beginning of the season. But once again, I'll be out of town starting on Sunday. I will be out of town for about 2 weeks, so just bear with me. Bear with me in the lack of content. Bear with me in the lack of live streams. I know it hurts me. I saw a comment there. Comic Dude, you're pretty disappointed, but we gotta do it. Gotta take advantage of the opportunities. So, but once again, thank you guys for all of your support and our support over the next couple of weeks. So, just wanted to get that out there. We had a decent number of people on the line. I should have done it when we had about 16, but so it goes. The people that really care, my good followers here, Comic Dude, Emperor of Rome, George will catch it, Prince 6'1", good to have you driving the car listening. So you guys, I know, will all hear it. Nona as well, Mike Myrick, all of you guys. Those are the ones I really need to know this stuff. So I appreciate it. All right, back to the comments here. Got that off my chest. Got that out there. Let's take a look here. Nona, Clemson quarterback's always getting hurt against Syracuse. Happened 2 years ago. Happened last year. Heaven forbid it happens to Trevor Lawrence this year. If that's the case, Syracuse really could pull off the upset. And, of course, you'll notice, if you remember 2 years ago when Syracuse won over Clemson, Clemson didn't drop that far in the rankings because they take into account the aspects of the game. They took into account that Clemson lost that game because they lost their quarterback. Had Clemson lost last year at home, they would have taken into account that they lost their quarterbacks to injury. And if they had lost to Syracuse, they would have taken that into account and they wouldn't have fallen that far. If Syracuse beats Clemson at full strength with Trevor Lawrence, you can bet your money that Clemson will drop. But don't drop as far because Syracuse is actually relevant. Syracuse more likely will be a ranked team at the time. So that's something to keep in mind as we get closer to that game. Ryan Mell, one reason that Nebraska is going to be better is just that the schedule is going to be much easier. Possibly. But although you got to keep in mind, Ryan, that last year, Nebraska was a 4-8 team, got much more competitive, as we mentioned, down the stretch. Nearly beat Iowa in the season finale. Couldn't get it done, but nearly beat them. But they lost to Troy. They lost to Colorado. That's 2 wins right there they probably should have had, both of those being at home. Definitely should have beaten Troy. I know Troy was good. I know Neil Brown had his team rolling. I know they beat LSU the year before. But, Nebraska had the team and the pieces there to get to a bowl game. But it was just, a new scenario, a new situation. And you said Justin Fields would have been better in an Urban Meyer system. I agree. Ohio State had a phenomenal plan in place. Urban Meyer head coach, Ryan Day offensive coordinator. He knew what he was doing. Now Ryan Day's head coach, and I still think the offense will be fine. I'm not saying he's not going to be coaching his players, but you saw the type of quarterbacks and offenses that Urban Meyer ran during his time with Utah, during his time with Florida, and then at Ohio State, all extremely dominant and very good quarterback play. Alex Smith with Utah, Tim Tebow at Florida. You got Dwayne Haskins, you had J.T. Barrett, you had Cardale Jones. I mean, solid quarterbacks at Ohio State. So it's just a new era for the Buckeyes, how they respond to it, and how Justin Fields and Ryan Day take over the reins and how they kind of boost this Buckeyes team in year one. It's going to be really interesting to see. And that's why a lot of people have Ohio State maybe not winning the Big Ten or making the playoff or maybe finally losing to Michigan this year. Is because of all the turnover in coaching and in quarterbacks and everything like that. I still think Ohio State's going to be a threat. I still think they're going to be tough to beat, but maybe not as much as they were under Urban Meyer, at least in year one. And Mike Myrick, I mentioned you earlier, but I see your comment now. Good to see you. Glad to have you. Always glad when you have joined the chat. And I'm sorry. You said, I heard you say it will be good for college football if Miami is relevant, and it will be awesome for college football if FSU is relevant also. You know I love my Seminoles, and I know it, man. You are one of the biggest FSU fans that I know. Big time Florida State guy. Those two programs down in Florida, when Florida teams are doing well, I think it's good for the sport. More than anything, I want to see that Miami-Florida State rivalry get back to, as I mentioned, meaning something. I was watching, I may have been on TV the other night, the rerun from, I think, 2 years ago, Miami and Florida State. Florida State was down around 20-something. Miami was number 10 in the country, and Florida State blocked the extra point, the game-tying extra point, and the Seminoles blocked that. I remember that game and thinking how big it would have been had Miami been able to pull off the win, and how big that was, kind of saving Florida State's season for the time. So you want that rivalry to mean something, because last year it didn't mean much. Florida State was kind of down in the dumps. Miami was the same way, had just got annihilated by LSU. They won 5 or 6 straight games after that loss to LSU, but still, you knew this wasn't the Miami team of 2 years ago when they were number 2 in the nation. So, I want that rivalry to mean something. I want that, that bitterness to be there. Miami had that swagger. I saw something the other day, too, looking back at the 2001 Miami team and just how star-studded that team was and how dominant Florida State's been the past couple years in the ACC. So I think it's going to be good, not just for the ACC to create some more competition, because I think it's boring for everybody to know that Clemson's going to win the conference this year. If anybody but Clemson wins the conference, it will be shocking. It'll be a major upset, because I don't think there's any team in the conference that can beat them right now. Syracuse is a threat. Maybe Virginia if they meet in the ACC title game. But right now, Miami's not there yet. Florida State's not there yet. So it's just going to take some time. But it's going to be good for the conference, and it's going to be good for football if they can get there. But you're right. It's good for college football, too, if Florida State is also relevant. And I hope that happens sooner than later for you, Mike, because I know it was tough last year. I know it was tough 2 years ago just making a bowl game. And so I know you want to get back to national dominance and national relevancy, not just borderline bowl eligibility. I don't even know how to pronounce that name. Kadera Khan. If you're new here, it's good to have you, man. I appreciate that. I'm assuming you are probably with AI24. Just judging from the comment. But if you're new and you've watched us before, go ahead and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. It's always good to have new viewers. I have a hard time keeping up with everybody's name on here, man, but good to have you. AI24, am I single? And I saw Emperor of Rome comment just a few seconds later. Not an appropriate question for the football stream, but let me just have a slight power outage. Excuse me if the lights go out, everybody, but am I single? Yes, AI24, I am, and I have no issues with that right now. So, but you're right. We don't talk much about the personal stuff on the football streams, but I like to answer as many questions as I can. DM, good to have you, man. You said you just got home, so I'm glad to have you on with us. You probably just missed my announcement. I commented back to you. You inspired me, man, the other day when I filmed that FCS video talking about some of the FCS threats versus the Division I or 1A schools. That was all you. So if you guys enjoyed that video, thank DM for that, because it wouldn't have happened without his suggestion. And of course, I take suggestions from everybody else too. But DM, I made a point a few minutes ago that I'm going to be out of town for the next few weeks. I will actually be in your neck of the woods. I will be in New York. You're from New York State, so I'll be there for a few days and making my way down to Bristol, spending a day or two over at ESPN. So we're really excited for that. But once again, glad to have you on the stream. Thank you for the suggestions, and thank you for the support. We really appreciate it more than you guys know. Ryan Mell, which division do I think is the most unpredictable? Big Ten West or ACC Coastal? And Comic Dude, you're saying Big Ten West. I saw somebody today put out their predictions, early predictions for the ACC Coastal Division. You had Virginia, You had Miami. You had, I'm trying to think who else was in there. I think they had number 2 was, I think North Carolina was in there. They weren't that high up, number 2, but North Carolina, teams like that. Now over in the Big Ten West, you have teams like Purdue, you have Wisconsin, you have Northwestern, you have Nebraska. So I think right now the ACC Coastal is almost Virginia's to lose. With the way that Virginia finished last year, with the talent that they bring back, I think they can pretty much wrap. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I feel very confident that Bronco Mendenhall can win that division with the Cavaliers. The Big Ten West, on the other hand, nobody in their right mind saw Northwestern, unless you're just a diehard Northwestern fan, nobody saw them getting to the Big Ten championship last year. They struggled mightily in the non-conference, but really picked it up in conference play and somehow snuck in there, also partially because Wisconsin did not live up to expectations. So I would agree, Comic Dude 45, I would agree. The Big Ten West, probably the most unpredictable this season compared to the ACC Coastal, because we don't know who's going to come out of that division. Wisconsin, I don't think, is back to the point where they were last year. You know, they were number 4 in the nation to start the season. Kind of petered off there very early on after that loss to BYU. I don't think they're there yet, but you don't want to doubt Paul Chryst. You don't want to doubt a team that has 2 very capable quarterbacks and Jonathan Taylor at running back. But Purdue, Ryan, I just saw your comment there. You like what Jeff Brom's doing at Purdue. He's building a good program, and I would absolutely agree with that. Purdue bringing back another solid quarterback in Elijah Sindelar, one of the best wide receivers in the conference, and Rondale Moore. And Brom's entering year 3. Back-to-back years they've gotten to bowl games, winning the first year, getting annihilated by Auburn last year, but he's building something there, so Purdue's a threat. Northwestern brings in Hunter Johnson at quarterback, a team that made the Big Ten title game last year, so a team that I think could once again be a threat. We mentioned Nebraska, Scott Frost, and Adrian Martinez, and a team that returns a lot of starters from last year's team that, yes, went 4-8, but showed a lot of promise towards the end. So I just listed 4 teams right there that could win that division. Compared to the Coastal, where I really think it's Virginia's to lose. Unless Miami surprises everybody and really just kind of, under Manny Diaz, just kind of takes off and does some phenomenal things, I don't think Pittsburgh's a threat. North Carolina's not. So I think you're right. I think the Big Ten West is probably the most unpredictable. And I forgot, totally forgot, Ryan. Very good point. Another team, make it 5 of 7. PJ Fleck at Minnesota looked dominant at the end of last season. They totally slipped my mind. A team that also returns tons of starters from a team last year that, yes, looked dominant towards the end of last season, picked up the slack, annihilated Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech in their bowl game. So I'm extremely interested to see how the Big Ten West shapes up now, and I'll even make another argument. I mean, that the East is the Big Ten. The Big Ten as a conference total. I'm so excited to share those predictions with you guys because that Big Ten conference period is going to be tough to predict. In the East, you've got Ohio State, of course, probably going to be the favorite, but Michigan right on their tail. Some people might have Michigan above the Buckeyes. You've got Michigan State, who under Mark D'Antonio can always win, can always surprise you. You've got Penn State. You don't want to count them out. So, I mean, that both sides of the Big Ten are really up for grabs. There's not one team that I just feel like they're a shoe-in for the Big Ten title game. They're a shoe-in for the playoff. Big Ten's going to be a lot of fun this year. The door is wide open for anybody to take the crown, and I'm pumped for it. I am so pumped for it. That's what makes college football so great. It's boring when you almost know what's going to happen. It's boring knowing what team is more than likely going to win the conference championship game, what team is more than likely going to win your division. You know, I feel for the teams. I saw a question down there about Arkansas, and we'll get there in a second. I feel for a team like Arkansas or maybe Ole Miss as of late that in the West know that Alabama is going to win the SEC West, more than likely. I know Auburn won it a few years ago. I know LSU's on the rise. I feel for teams like Vanderbilt over in the SEC East that know it's probably going to be Georgia or Florida. You know, earlier 2000s, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on, was kind of Florida's year, kind of that Florida's dominant age. Now it's kind of resulted to Georgia, even though Dan Mullen's bringing it back. So I feel for teams that just know what's going to happen. But the Big Ten is certainly not going to be like that this year. DM, I appreciate that, man. ESPN should hire you as a consultant commentator. I appreciate that, and I will have a safe trip to DM land that you live in. I definitely will, and if you see me walking along the streets of New York, don't hesitate to shout out. But no, I appreciate that comment, man. I will have a safe trip. We're really excited to get up there, and who knows, maybe we'll strike some sort of deal when we run down to Bristol in a few days. Orange County, New York. Orange County, New York. So, I don't know where that is in proximity. I've never been to that part of the country before, but still, we definitely will. And like I said, thank you for the suggestions and the comments and the support. Like I said, for all of you guys, means more than you guys seriously know. AI24, how do you think Arkansas will be this year? So we got an Arkansas fan on the line. I tell you what, I think Isaac, if I remember correctly, you looking at an Arkansas team that struggled so bad last year at 2-10, but bring in not one but two transfer quarterbacks in Ben Hicks and Nick Starkel to pair with a very talented wide receiver recruiting class, young wide receivers. But, a little fun fact, you look at some old wide receivers that Arkansas had in years past, Greg Childs, Jarius Wright, Joe Adams, Kobe Hamilton, that all kind of came in around the same time and ended up being one of the best receiving corps in the nation when Arkansas hit their stride under Bobby Petrino in 2010 or 2011. Eli, you have Arkansas at 6-6, and I think that is probably the max for Arkansas this year. I don't see them going anywhere over 6 wins. I'm not saying they're going to even get there, but I know they have 4 non-conference games they should take care of. We thought they would have taken care of that last year too, and we talked about this in our last live stream. We thought they would have taken care of Colorado State and North Texas, and I think they played Eastern Illinois and Tulsa last year. They won 2 of those. Their 2 wins came against Tulsa and Eastern Illinois. We assume they can take care of, I think this year they had Portland State, Portland State, Colorado State, San Jose State, and some other really bad team, Western Kentucky, who will be led by Ty Storey, the former Arkansas quarterback last year. So that's 4 wins, should be, for the Razorbacks. That means they got to win 2 conference games, but can they win 2 SEC games? And who will they come against? It's not going to come against Alabama. It's not going to come against LSU. Probably not going to come against Auburn or Texas A&M. So there's 4 losses. Now they're 4-4. I mean, and I'm not going to share my prediction for you there, but if they play at Kentucky, they play Missouri, they play Ole Miss, maybe Mississippi State, but it's going to be a tough year for Chad Morris in year 2. The SC West, one of the toughest divisions in all of college football, and it's going to take some time for him to build this team up. 2-10 last year. If he can double that and get to 4, maybe 5 wins, he's obviously going in the right direction. And I saw Ryan Mell there. Trey Knox, one of the wide receivers that Arkansas did recruit this year, is scary. They also have 3 other 4-star wide receivers. And that's kind of what Chad Morris is known for, guys, bringing in that talent on offense. He was offensive coordinator with Clemson. His offenses at SMU, when he got them rolling, were tough to defend. And that's why bringing in Ben Hicks, the quarterback that played under Chad Morris at SMU, was such a big deal for Razorback fans because they had that chemistry there. And he's got a great core of wide receivers to throw to. So you're right. He is extremely scary, and he's just going to be a freshman. I think he makes an immediate impact. I think you will hear his name called quite a bit. Could potentially receive some big-time postseason awards in the SEC. Now, I'm not talking like major, like best wide receiver awards or anything, but you'll know his name by the end of the season, I think, for the Razorbacks. And there's a sign of great things to come for his sophomore year and junior year and so on, especially with this type of offense that Chad Morris will continue to run during his time in Fayetteville. Emperor of Rome, another big-time fact. The first NFL game was on September 26, 1920. The Rock Island Independents defeated the St. Paul Ideals with a final score of 48-0 in a stadium that only seats 5,000 people. Of course, I didn't know that. And honestly, just joking, Emperor of Rome, you could probably spit out some random facts, a random date, some random names, a random score, and I would have no idea if you're correct or not. Now, I do believe you. I really do. I'm definitely, and that's an interesting fact. All the way back in 1920, and you started to hear about some of the bigger NFL programs, back starting around the 1940s. There were times, World War II started happening. Happened in the 40s, so that kind of screwed up the NFL a little bit. And then, of course, 1950s, first Super Bowl was in 1966, so it took them, 46 years after that first NFL game between 2 teams that aren't even around anymore, at least their names aren't, to produce the first Super Bowl. And when you think about it, it's pretty quick. 46, I mean, nearly 50 years seems like a long time, but to begin a league, to develop a league, to get players, to get fans, to get front office people, to arrange everything, stadiums, everything, 50 years to the first Super, 46 to be exact, not too bad in terms of the inception of the NFL and how well they have developed over the years. MCD Sports 4, I'm sorry, we're talking about so many different Big Ten teams here. Maryland, of course. How can I forget? Honestly, how could I forget about Maryland in the Big Ten in terms of when we were listing teams in the East and the West? Now, I hate to break it to you, MCD. I don't think that Maryland is a title contender this year, but I do think they have the talent to get to the postseason. I do think that, a lot of people sometimes like to write off new coaches. They say, oh, new coach, that means they're not going bowling. It's going to be a rebuilding year. That's not always the case. And Mike Locksley inherits a very, very good, team in the sense of, he really isn't having to rebuild. Maryland wasn't bad last year. Hasn't really been bad by any, if you depends on how you classify bad, the past couple of years. Then you get the transfer quarterback in Josh Jackson. That's a pretty big blessing for a brand new head coach. So you think 9-3 is your ceiling? Like I said, I actually haven't even done the Maryland predictions yet. Not gonna lie, haven't even gotten to that point yet. We've done some of the Big Ten, but we have not done Maryland. I haven't really analyzed their schedule that much either. But 9-3, a pretty high ceiling. I'll certainly keep that in mind. One of the beautiful things about this is I love hearing from people that are experts on their teams. Like you, MCD Sports, you know about Maryland. Comic Dude 45 knows about Rutgers. Cyclone Mitch knows about Iowa State. Emperor Rome knows about Alabama. So you get what I'm saying here. The beauty of these live streams and the beauty of y'all commenting on our videos is that you guys know your teams. Now, of course, I do too. Once we've done the predictions and stuff, I know about y'all's teams as well. Know about them now. But you guys sometimes know a little bit more because you're following them closer than I am. You're focusing in on one team. I'm focusing on the grand college football. That's the beauty of it. And I love that. I really do. Ryan Bell, going back to Syracuse real quick. So that's all fine by me. Having two fantastic pass rushers in Alton Robinson and Kendall Coleman. Now, we mentioned Robinson a lot last year. Yeah, we mentioned how big of a deal he was. But it seems like any Syracuse highlight videos had sacks from those two guys. Robinson was the big name for me last year. When I was predicting Syracuse and we went through them, we talked about them, that was that one big defensive star player that I kind of honed in on and kind of keyed in on. But you're right, him and Coleman, dangerous defensively for Syracuse. And we talk so much about their offense because that's kind of what Dino Babers is known for and what Syracuse had last year. They put up some points last year. Not a lot of people talked about that Syracuse defense that shut down West Virginia's offense in their bowl game. I know Will Greer didn't play, but shut down West Virginia in that offense. That did a very good job shutting down Clemson. I know Clemson's quarterbacks got hurt too, but this Syracuse team, once again, is not going to take that big of a step back. I can assure you of that. And Ryan makes a very good point that while we talk so much about Tommy DeVito, while we talk so much about the offense and the transitioning there, the defense will remain strong. And you need a defense to win championships. You need defense to remain competitive. And that is huge for that, for the Orange going into the season. I would expect nothing less. Right off the top of my head, haven't even done Syracuse yet, nothing less than 7 or 8 wins for the Orange. Comment to Rutgers is not bad because of poor talent. We're bad because of poor coaching. You can't change my mind. Well, we've had this conversation, guys, so many times on these live streams. Is what do we define as talent? What do we define? Can talent be taught? Can you be coached? Do teams really good because of talent, or are they good because of coaching? We've discussed that a lot, and and I think I saw Eli say, "You agree, Ash is awful." I'm personally just shocked that Ash has been around this long. Rutgers has given him this big of a grace period, and I can assure you guys that if he fails to win, I think I said 4 or 5 games this season, I think he's out as Rutgers coach, and I think he could very well be out if he doesn't even get to a bowl game. Even if he wins 4 or 5, he could be out. But you, of course, know more than I do in the sense of the contract. Ash is owed too much money, and the buyouts are always a pain for any program when it comes to that sense. But I remember a few years ago, as recently as 2013, 2014, where Rutgers was competitive, where Rutgers was looking good. And I'm not saying they were looking good in the sense of Big Ten titles or anything like that, but they were making bowl games. And I remember my favorite quarterback in the recent years for Rutgers was Gary Nova. Oh, man, I love to watch him play. They were fun to watch. They can put up some points, man. So the talent is there and was there. I think it was what was it? Kyle Flood was the last coach, right, under Rutgers, and he did a decent job, not amazing, but did a decent job of recruiting. He was at least able to bring in the talent. So, like you said, it's not necessarily the players are bad; it's the fact they're not being coached. It takes a good coach to coach players to make them compete and make that team a whole. You can bring in as many 5-star recruits as you want, but if you can't get a coach to develop that talent, it's worthless. And I don't think Chris Ash is doing that. So I agree with that. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that on there. Part of it is recruiting, though. Part of it is, sometimes some players are uncoachable. Some players are, they're tough to coach, and maybe they just don't have that type of talent. That even if you do try to coach them, they're not going to be able to be competing against some of the best talent like Ohio State, Michigan, and such in the Big Ten. But a lot of it does come down to coaching. I do agree with that. DM, yeah, you know about North Dakota State, and I was slipping my mind. We were talking about Power 5, of course, but you do know about North Dakota State. Awesome indoor stadium in Fargo. Game Day visited there twice. Of course, we knew that. I do enjoy when Game Day goes to those FCS schools. Sometimes when there's a week where there's like a dead week and we don't have a major FBS game going on, one that deserves Game Day, they go to maybe Harvard and Yale or a James Madison or a North Dakota State or someone like that, and that's always fun to watch. And of course, knowing about North Dakota State all the way from New York, knows a lot about North Dakota State. And that right there is the beauty of college football. Mike Myrick, I saw your comment, man. I'm trying to get back to it. I appreciate that so much more than you guys know. I know college football. That's why you are one of my big supporters. And I've noticed that, man. I've noticed that on Twitter. I've noticed that here on every video that we post, every live stream that we do. And Mike, you being one of our biggest supporters, it means a lot. All of you guys that have stuck around for this hour or so of a live stream are some of my biggest supporters. And that means more than you guys know. It's unbelievable the amount of support. I can promise you this. If we didn't have the type of support that you guys gave us, we didn't have you guys interacting in the comments and sharing your thoughts and your opinions and everything like that, we would not be sitting here right now doing a live stream. I don't know where I'd be out doing, but I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't spend hours slaving over predictions in the summer or making videos. I wouldn't be dressed up in this. It's you guys. Because of you guys, this happens. This is all because of you. So I appreciate that, Mike, more than you guys know. And everybody else that stuck around and said those things and has shared everything, their college football insight and everything like that. It means more than you guys know. And it's what keeps me going every single time that I sit down to film something new. So thank you so much for that. Talking a little bit, I knew we couldn't escape it for long. Prince, 6'1". I'm glad to have you, man. He missed the last live stream, so I'm glad to have him back for this one. And of course, we're going to be talking some Clemson right now. Look for Frank Ladson Jr. to be a freshman breakout player for Clemson. He should replace Hunter Renfrow's spot in the slot. And those, Prince, are some major shoes to fill because I was such a huge fan of Hunter Renfrow. Of course, his biggest moment coming against Alabama, clinching the national championship back in, I think it was 2016. But Hunter Renfrow, for me, was one of those kind of underdog stories. He was just a short little wide receiver that no one really, I think, kind of gave much thought to. But he was a force, man. He was tough to defend and a tough player. And in his toughness period, hit after hit after hit, he would take some big-time hits. And for a guy that size, you think it would rattle him, pop right back up. I was a huge fan of Hunter Renfrow. I'm not even necessarily a Clemson fan. I've enjoyed seeing them succeed. I have rooted for them at times over the past couple of years, but they're not my team per se. But I am a huge proponent of Dabo Swinney, huge fan of him. But Hunter Renfrow has been one of my players. I'm glad he's got his shot in the NFL, man. I really am. So, but we'll keep an eye out for him. That was a big shoe that they were going to have to replace anyways. So Frank Ladson Jr., I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit about him when we break down Clemson here in a few weeks. And another thing here is 6'3", so a little bit taller than Hunter Renfrow. Great route runner, elite agility, exactly what they need, exactly what any team needs when you're dealing with a receiver in the slot. So, and Clemson just continues to rebuild year after year after year. You see some of the recruits that they are getting; it's unbelievable, just year in and year out. For a while it was Alabama that we were seeing that was getting every 5-star recruit that you would see pop up. And Alabama's still recruiting extremely well, but Clemson is the team that's really starting to fight them for that top spot in the recruiting rankings. So Eli, actually, hold on, before I get to that, I want to keep talking about Clemson for a second, just so we're not bouncing all the way around. Prince, again, how about this Clemson? We just mentioned that early. Clemson 2029 recruiting class. I'm assuming you typed that right. 5 5-star commits already. So 5 5-star commits. And if we're talking about that right, surely not. I'm sure it's maybe 2020. I don't. Yeah, 2029, 10 years away. But 2020 class, 5 5-star commits already. And that's what I was talking about. I hadn't even seen that comment yet. But the fact that Clemson continues just to restock. You lose a guy like Hunter Renfrow, you lose a star quarterback in like a Deshaun Watson or something like that, and they continue to rebuild, they continue to restock, and that's credit to Clemson's success. People don't want to go play at a school that fails. People don't want to go play at a school that can't win. Dabo Swinney has made it very obvious that we can win, and we can win big. We can beat the big dogs. We win in the ACC. We're beating teams like Florida State and guys like that, the Miami, the bigger threats and bigger maybe names in the ACC. But we can also beat some of the better big dogs in the SEC. A couple of years ago, they had that home and home with Georgia. Those were all thrillers. They've beaten Alabama. They've won games in the college football playoff. So they're making it very evident that if you want to come win, you need to come to Clemson. This Clemson-Alabama saga that we've had these past couple of years in the college football playoff, I think 4 straight years now that we've seen them meet, whether it's in a national title game or a semifinal, reminds me so much of, and I think we addressed it, like the Celtics and Lakers rivalry back in the NBA. Just, some people get tired of it. People want to see somebody new. But for sports fans, it's the beauty, because beforehand, Clemson and Alabama weren't rivals, guys. I mean, there was no reason to be. Now they are. Now you're expecting a Clemson-Alabama showdown at some point in the college football playoff semifinal or a national title game. And when it does, I mean, that bad blood all comes rushing back. The series is tied, I think, 2-2 right now. Clemson winning 2 national titles, Alabama winning 1, and then beating them in the Sugar Bowl to get to the national championship, which they won over Georgia. But it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And Clemson, like you mentioned, recruiting extremely well. All the credit in the world to Dabo Swinney. You're expecting 6 5-stars total, right? 2020 class is what I thought. And if Clemson lands Jordan Burch, 3 of their 6 5-stars will be on the defensive line and could rival this past year's defensive line. Well, that just, once again, as I keep restocking, rebuilding, and it's just as one player moves out, another one comes in. That defensive line over the past couple of years with Farrell and Wilkins and Lawrence, it was unbelievable. And I'm so glad they came back for Clemson. They came back to win a national title, because after the devastating ending to the year before. But, right, they don't rebuild, they reload. I mean, that's even a better word for it, Colin, dude. You're exactly right. They're not just rebuilding, they're reloading. It's just one guy leaves, another one comes in. And if that's the case, if 3 of those 5-stars are going to be on the defensive line, they very well could rival that defensive line. And if they stick around for the whole 4 years, much like this past defensive line did, Clemson is going to be a force well past this year and the next year and the next year after that, well past 2022, which is unbelievable. Assuming Dabo Swinney sticks around, you've all heard the rumors that potentially maybe when Nick Saban leaves, choosing to retire, maybe Dabo Swinney will become the next head coach at Alabama. I highly doubt that with the amount of success, but Dabo Swinney played at Alabama. He's got connections there. He is arguably the best head coach in college football right now, right behind Nick Saban. Some even have him above him or tied with him. So when Nick Saban leaves, why not replace him with the next best thing in Dabo Swinney? That's just a thought, but that's a ways away, and I don't know if Dabo would do that after the success and everything that he's done for this Clemson program. So we're going to keep looking through some comments here. I skipped a couple to get back to continue the Clemson talk here. Mike Myrick, you think Kendall Briles will have the offense going in the right direction, and you have no doubt about that. So, of course, Kendall Briles, big star at Florida State, and you're hoping that he's going to hopefully transform a Florida State offense that was just, and I'm sorry, Mike, to say this, but pretty awful last year. I remember watching the Week 1 game, Mike, last year, Florida State and Virginia Tech, and just, I think it was like number 19 versus number 20 or something like that. And I picked Florida State in that game. But as the game progressed, I genuinely got worried, not just of that game, which of course Virginia Tech took care of, but for the state of Florida State that season, because that was not typical Seminoles football. And you could see that there was some cause of concern on both sides of the ball, but specifically on the offensive side. So maybe Kendall Briles gets things going in the right direction. You've got, I think you've got Cam Akers coming back, if I'm not mistaken, at running back, and some people say he's overrated. I don't agree with that. I think he's a very solid running back. And then of course you've got a quarterback right now, quarterback battle going on right now. Hornibrook, Blackman, who's it going to be? I'm curious, actually, Mike. I would like to know your thoughts on that. Who do you want? Who do you want at QB for the Seminoles this season? I'd like to know that. And as I answer this real quick, but who do you want at quarterback for the Seminoles? Do you want Blackman? Do you want Hornibrook? I think Briles gets him. I think I think he's got a chance to do pretty well there as offensive coordinator. I think, he's going to be able to utilize Cam Akers. Florida State knows how to recruit. They have the talent there, as we mentioned. It's whether the talent can be coached or not, and I think Briles will be able to do that, coach them well. But can they make those huge strides in year one as him with coordinator and who they have at quarterback? And let me go back here. I think you said Blackman. I think you said James Blackman. So you want James Blackman as your quarterback. And I understand that because he's more familiar with the system than Alex Hornibrook. Hornibrook got a very bad rap, guys. I've said that over and over again. Got a horrible rap for his time at Wisconsin. I thought he played well with them. Made some mistakes. Wasn't like one of the most elite quarterbacks in the Big Ten, but he wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. But Blackman has played at Florida State, knows the system better. Wouldn't be surprised to see Blackman take over in Week 1, get the Week 1 starting job against Boise State, but will Hornibrook take over later on? And I think he will. I think he will see, especially early on when Florida State starts to play some of those kind of weaker opponents, those FCS teams like that. That's going to be a wonderful opportunity to see how they respond to real in-game situations, and then Taggart can kind of make his decision moving forward. But I think Blackman gets to start in Week 1, and that's clearly who you want there. According to you. So, and you're right, he's a good quarterback. Glad he's here. It's good to have that insurance. I think he's only got 1 year left anyway, so he's going to want to make the most of it, but it was never a given. Hornibrook transferring to Florida State was not like Justin Fields or Tate Martell transferring to Ohio State and Miami. That job was not a guarantee for Hornibrook down in Tallahassee. Let's see what else we have here. I'm looking through the comments. Emperor of Rome, another good fact, talking about the NFL. Only 2 of the original 14 NFL teams are still around at all. The Chicago Cardinals are now in Arizona, of course, and the Decatur Staleys are now the Chicago Bears. So there you have it. If you wanted to know some NFL history, the expert live streams, and listen to Emperor of Rome, because he's going to fill you in on all of those facts and all the information. I absolutely love it. It's continuing to inform me on some fun stuff. So thank you for that. So 2 of the original 14 are still around. We mentioned, the first game being played back in 1920, developed pretty quickly. 46 years was the first Super Bowl. 46 years after that first game, first Super Bowl. And it's still amazing to me that we had 14 original NFL teams and 2 were still around. You see so much overturn. You see so much turnover and so many changes from city to city and owners and everything that we still have 2 of the originals that are still around, the Bears and the Cardinals. I think that's pretty impressive. It's pretty neat and really impressive that teams can last that long through so much change, so many league changes, through everything that I just mentioned. We still got two of the actual originals. I think it's pretty neat. Eli, back earlier, talking about maybe Maryland upsetting Syracuse, only giving Maryland a chance over Syracuse because they had them at home. And Eli, you've watched me long enough. You know how big of a deal home field advantage is for me. Now, just because a team plays at home doesn't mean it's a guaranteed win, but you do know that I do think home field advantage plays a major role, especially in big time games. If it's a game that I'm looking at and it's legitimately a toss up, usually the team that has the home field advantage gets a slight edge in my book because the home crowd really is the 12th man. College Station is the 12th man. You have the Seattle Seahawks, they have the 12th man. It's a real thing. If you have a crowd that shows up and shows out, they really are the 12th man, can play a major factor and play a big role in the outcome of a game. So Ryan Mel, can't wait for the Georgia and Clemson to play in the future. Yeah, they did kind of sign up. I think they just arranged that way down the road. We talked about that a long time ago, how crazy it is to be assigning games, 2027 and 2028, 2033, stuff like that. But Georgia and Clemson, I think, did agree to another home and home. Those back in the early 2000s or early 2010s, 2010, 2011, those were great games. And if Georgia and Clemson continue to stay relevant down the road when they have a home and home way down the road, then it's going to be even better than the first time. And the Clemson-Alabama rivalry, Emperor of Rome, has absolutely been fun. I've enjoyed it. Alabama's not my team. Clemson's not my team. But to see two college... And I know for some people it is getting boring. I get that. I know for some people it's frustrating. For an Alabama fan, a Clemson fan, it's the best thing in the world because your teams are doing so well. But I know for a team like a Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, the guys that have maybe been to the college football playoff or right on the outskirts, to not get there, to not win, has been frustrating. So I do understand that, but for the fans, it's really neat. And once again, you probably won't see this again. You probably will not see two teams with this playoff system when Clemson and Alabama's dynasties are over, when they start to kind of take a downward turn. You will probably not see two teams that consistently, year in and year out, meet each other in the semifinals or the national championship. And we have to appreciate that. You really do. I love them or hate them. You have to appreciate that and admire the work that's being done at Clemson and at Alabama. Rutgers doesn't have a 12th man, but Comic Dude, they used to. And he's right, they used to. Like I mentioned, Rutgers used to be good. Not like national championship or conference title good, but they used to be good. 7 wins, 8 wins, maybe 9. They used to. That place can get loud if we get the place going. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Rutgers used to be very relevant, just hasn't been as of late. And it might take a coaching change for them to get back to that point. But we'll see how things turn out in 2019. Change it. Rutgers doesn't have a 12th man anymore. Good save there. Good save there, DM. And one more NFL fact here before we start to wrap things up. Emperor of Rome, in its first 2 seasons, they weren't even called the NFL. They were called the American Professional Football Association, so the APFA. And of course, that's not a huge surprise. I think it used to be the NFL and the AFL. Now we have the NFC and the AFC. So a league like that, so many changes over the years, and you have to. The league, any league, college football, NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever, has to change with the times. You can't stay stuck. If you're not moving forward, if you're staying in the same place, you have to continue to move forward. You have to change with the times. You have to change with the change in players and what the fans want, change in technology. There's so many things that change with sports leagues. And I think you definitely saw that with the NFL. I mean, from 1920, almost 100 years. We're actually entering the 100th year. That's the big year. The Packers and the Bears going to kick off the NFL season. Usually it's the Super Bowl champion versus whoever they choose on that opening Thursday night, but it's going to be the Packers and Bears, one of the most historic rivalries in the NFL. Going to kick off the 100th season of the National Football League, so it's a pretty cool thing. And I did know that, actually, Emperor of Rome. Rutgers won the first football game in 1869. So, comic dude, that's the one thing that Rutgers certainly does have going for them. They won the first ever football game, 1869. So, that does count. DM watched the Rutgers Nova quarterback, Gary Nova, as I mentioned. Victory highlights over Michigan. Flood was the coach. And the place was electric, and saw the highlights. So, yeah. Rutgers has that, we all know, has the capability of being very electric. Their times back before they joined the Big Ten was where they thrived the most, I felt like. The Big Ten's been an adjustment for them, no doubt. But they did extremely well. And their time's coming, man. Comic dude, their time's coming. Any Rutgers fans out there, your time is coming. It's just taking a little while longer than they've hoped for. Might not happen in 2019 either. But maybe when they usher in a new head coach, some new excitement, that place can get electric once again. And all it takes is one major win to really revive a program, or one major coaching change to really revive a program. So we're going to wait and see how that all plays out for the Scarlet Knights. But I'm excited. I really am excited. Highpoint.com, funeral home. Why, Emperor of Rome, that's nothing, man. They beat Princeton in a final score of 6-4, so 3 safeties and 2 safeties, right? But no, how about that Georgia Tech over Cumberland, though? 222-0. How about that? Now, that's a real score. 6-4, of course, but 222-0. Yeah, unbelievable. Rutgers gets the national spotlight, week 2, Fox Sports 1 against Iowa. Big Ten. Big Ten matchup. Maybe there's your breakthrough. National spotlight on Fox Sports. Maybe Rutgers gets a key Big Ten win, and maybe Chris Ash surprises us all, saves his job, and gets Rutgers to 6 wins. That would be remarkable. Be a remarkable job. Artur Sitkowski entering year 2 as quarterback. Maybe he's going to make some major strides. Maybe he's not going to hit a sophomore slump, although I can't imagine you going any lower than where he was last year. So maybe he hits a sophomore stride, a sophomore high. Maybe does better for the Scarlet Knights than we were expecting. So we'll see how that all plays out. I'm really excited, guys. We're going to wrap things up here, going for well over an hour, and I've enjoyed every second of it. Some great discussion and some great facts, of course, from Emperor of Rome. The winning coach in the 222-0 game was John Heisman, hence the Heisman Trophy, which we will be having a video coming out on very shortly. We're going to be talking about some early odds there. So, John Heisman, the greatest coach ever, according to Emperor of Rome, and obviously was pretty darn good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have named the best award in all of college football in his name. So, but like I said, we're going to wrap things up. DM, good night, man, and thank you guys for all joining us late at night. This is like the latest live stream we've ever done. I know it's not on one of our normal days, but I wanted to make sure we got one more in before I went away for a couple of weeks. So thank you all for joining us. Definitely be safe. Mike Myrick back at you guys. I want you guys to all have a good night. Stay tuned for some more content coming up very soon. Even though we'll be on the road, we're still going to be posting. And of course, June 27th, that's the big day when things are really going to kick off. And we're going to have a blast. Go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert. Continue to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys have a safe rest of the night. Thank you for joining us, and we'll